Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today for Spellbinders with the stamp of the month for January, Key to My Heart stamps. This is an incredible cling stamp set to make some fantastic love-themed cards. I'm going to share with you how I created a couple of one-layer cards today, with the exception, of course, of some fun embellishment at the end, but everything else is one layer. I painted or watercolored with some of my favorite metallic gold paints, and it's just probably one of my favorite, more elegant projects for Valentine's or any type of love type occasion you need a card for. We're going to start with some red cardstock first and stamp the Always and Forever and the Heart Locket cling stamps on the red cardstock. I did use a powder tool first, and I am offsetting my heart. This is going to be the center of the winged design. I do want to mention that there are some coordinating dies for this stamp set. They do not come in the stamp set of the month, but you can get them as an additional or an add-on type of purchase. I really wanted to share how, if you are only subscribing to the stamp set of the month, how you can create some cards and maybe do a little masking like I'm going to do here on the first card, or just simply create a one-layer card like I'll do on the second design. I do have a mask here already created. The reason it's green is I had originally tried a couple of other things with this stamp set that I didn't love as much. So I had already used the mask and I went ahead and reused it. I am using masking paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the wings, which are probably the image that drew my eye in first in this stamp set, to be honest. And then I'm going to use an additional sentiment right below the Always and Forever. And my stamp was a little wet and I was afraid that it was going to smudge my embossing powder. So I did dry that with my heat tool, and then I came back and stamped this again. So that's two cling sentiments and two cling images for a total of 4 from the stamp set on this card. I will tell you too, I think I used all but maybe one greeting from this stamp set on my cards today. So I used all of the images in both cards. Really useful, beautiful images. I have sprinkled on all my white embossing powder. I am heat setting this. I love the look of white embossing powder on dark cardstock. I also really love gold embossing powder. I think that's a really pretty option, or even silver for this particular technique. However, because these were more Valentine's love themed cards, I did go with the white embossing. And I've offset my little wings and heart locket. For whatever reason, I have been super drawn to this particular layout this season. And for my first card, I'm going to trim this panel down. This was a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece. I'm going to trim it down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 so that it has a nice 1/8 inch border all the way around on a white card base. And I trimmed about 1/8 of an inch off each side just to keep it nice and balanced, to make sure my sentiment stayed balanced. And now I am going to grab my water brush pen and also my metallic gold watercolors, and I am going to watercolor these images. I'm using the white gold for the wings. I find that a little less water, here you're going to see there's a lot of water in my brush and in the little pan. It waters down the wings quite a bit. The less water you use, the darker the wings are going to be. I ended up going over them with a little less water just to get a really great coverage. And the embossed area helps hold the watercolor in the design. So the wings have that great design that really shows through. The locket we're going to color with one of the other gold, darker gold, more gold colors. This is white gold, so it's really just white with the shimmer to it. And then the locket, we're going to do a combination of gold and white. We're going to use a few additional colors from this palette for the keys card, which I'll show you when we get to that one here in a second. I started with this light gold color. I did transition more to one of those that are in the bottom three. I went after this dried just because it's not showing up great, and I really wanted it to have more of a presence on the red cardstock, and this was just a little too light, I think. And so I did go to one of the other darker colors, and I might have done that off camera. I can't really remember. But just know that when you look at the finished card and you're like, wow, it's a lot more gold than what it looks like here, that is because I used one of those bottom three colors. I used a lot more of those bottom three colors in my second card design. I tend to not be drawn to those for whatever reason, but I'm really, really glad that I used more of those for my card today because they make a world of difference. They show up. I even think on the gray background, you can really see the different colors. Really fun. So nice variation on all of that. Next, I am taking some Picket Fence Distress Paint. Between this card and the second card, I had to get my new bottle of Distress Paint out because I have used all of this. This is probably my most often used paint color. I don't use a ton of paints anymore, but I really use a lot of this one. Now the problem is it's really watered down when I started out. So while look at those splatters, they're really white, it looks great. As it dries, it is absorbed into the cardstock and I get all these lighter areas, but they're not super opaque. And you can even see it, it's starting to dry now, and I was really bummed because I've already painted my background, and I wanted white splatters. I did not want all of these light ones. So what I ended up doing was adding more white paint to this and splattering it again. You can see this is the same piece of cardstock. Look at how much that absorbed in there. So if you add too much water, you are going to lose the opaqueness. So I added more paint and I did more splatters, and I actually ended up really loving how it turned out. But that just kind of distresses the background, adds a little bit of interest, especially because it's a pretty simple design. We're going to set that aside to dry, and we're going to work on the second card, and then we'll come back and put both of them all the way together. So this is some dark gray cardstock, and this time let's position our sentiment first. That is the focal point of the card. The lockets and the keys are all going to be the supporting cast of characters, but I always want to make sure I start with the sentiment and get that placed first, and then add everything around it because we're creating an all-over background. So I added as many images as I could. Remember that these are cling stamps, so if you're using your stamp positioner like I am, to take your foam insert out because you're not going to need it because they're clings. And then I'm going to ink these up with a clear embossing ink and stamp these down. I will also tell you that I think what works best is sprinkling on your white embossing powder on what you've stamped, heat setting that, adding more powder deactivation tool if you need to, and stamping more images. I did have to do this background a couple of times, and it was a little frustrating. I'm glad I persevered because I think it turned out fantastic, but I tried to stamp everything like I stamped it, I didn't add embossing powder, I flipped it around, I added more images, I flipped it around, I added more images, and then I added my embossing powder and heat set it. And what happened was my embossing powder did not stick to some of those images that I first stamped as well, and that included the sentiment, and it was a little light in areas, which bummed me out bad because I didn't think it was as bold and beautiful as it should be. That's why I redid the background. So I think I would highly recommend stamping like I did, add your embossing powder, clean your stamps, reposition them, flip your paper around, whatever you need to do. You can see that I'm flipping it in my MISTI quite a bit. I'm trying to stamp as many of these images with each press as possible to minimize the amount of times I have to stamp and emboss and then switch. So I'm adding, like I said, quite a few here, just trying to mix it up, get everything added in. I have a paintbrush here that I'm removing some stray embossing flakes that are kind of being a nuisance. And I really played with the stamps, moved them around, just getting the perfect placement. And then, of course, picking them up, stamping those, embossing, and we're just going to repeat this. We're going to repeat this until the entire panel is covered. And I really wanted to show the process because this is a fantastic technique to do with lots of different stamp sets. Not just this one. We're definitely showcasing the Spellbinders Stamp of the Month Club stamps here, but you can do this with all kinds of stamp sets with fantastic results. Really, really excited about the Spellbinders Stamp of the Month. They have fantastic club kits. I'm a very big fan and advocate of their stamp sets, or pardon me, their club kits, and I'm glad they added a stamp one. That's what I wanted to say. So now for the magic. Let's color in our images, and look how awesome these metallic colors are coloring over this dark cardstock. Again, the key to getting such fantastic results is a little less water and a little more paint. So I made sure, added my water to my little paint pan there, mixed it up as best as I could to get the color moving and be able to pick it up easily. But then I tried to grab it so that I got lots of color and just a tiny bit of water. And this is really going to help give fantastic results. I did color in my lockets. What I ended up doing was I kind of moved in sections. So I did lockets. A couple of those lockets I've left quite a bit of open space or things not colored, and I'm going to go in with a different color for that area. And then I would move on to the next image, in this case the keys. So any of the keys that are this shape, I'm coloring with this color. Part of the reason is I made sure when I was stamping that I didn't put two images that were the same right next to each other. So I'm not going to be coloring two images that are going to be in the same color next to each other if I move around in this way. So it's a really great way to make sure that you're moving your color around and you have a nice balance and you don't have a whole bunch of a certain gold color right next to each other. So let's go. This is the more rosy gold color. Very, very pretty. It's never one I am drawn to. I don't know why, because it ended up being, I think, my favorite. I really loved the results on this key here. I think it shows up fantastic. Really adds a nice contrast and color. This is a fun project and really fast. Coloring in embossed areas with a watercolor, that embossed area just kind of holds your watercolor where you put it down, and it doesn't migrate outside the lines unless you add just way too much water. But I think it's a fantastic way. I kind of call it my cheater watercolor way. It's a way that I feel comfortable with because I am not the world's best watercolorer. So I like to do it this way with an embossed line because it makes me look like I'm really, successful with it, because this is a success, but it's very easy. So now I'm going to move on and we'll add another color. We just need to finish coloring in, a few more of these keys just here and there. So pretty. I just love this. A really fun way to create a decorative background. If you guys follow me, you probably know that I love creating stamped backgrounds like this, my own custom backgrounds, almost like your own pattern paper design. One of my very favorite things to do, and it's such a great way to create amazing stamped cards without any die cutting at all. Again, we're going to take some white paint. This is my new paint little container, so I didn't have to add much water to it, which was fantastic. We're going to splatter that background, give it some nice distressing, little opaque white splatters all over. Let this dry completely. and then come back and we can start embellishing. So let's start with our red background since it's all the way dry. I'm going to put some adhesive on my white top fold card base, pop this panel down. You guys, really, if you don't want to add any embellishment at all, it's beautiful as is. You could go ahead and pop this in an envelope, you know, put your little greeting inside, and it's ready to go. There were some splatters on my wings in a couple areas I just wasn't super happy with, so I did end up going back over it with that white gold paint. That's what I did right there, to darken a couple of places, and then I'm going to add my embellishment. These are some little kind of foamish type hearts. These are from Honeybee Stamps. They are the candy hearts in the Be Mine color. Love, love, love these. I think that they are phenomenal. They're just the right dimension. They're so teeny tiny. And I'm going to scatter those throughout, and then I'm adding some pretty pink Posh metallic gemstones as well. And they really pick up the fantastic sheen, which I hope you could see when I flip that kind of at an angle, from the paint that we used. They are just a fantastic little embellishment. They complement the designs so nice. Again, for the other card background, we're going to add those candy hearts, those little white hearts, especially one by the sentiment, and then a few throughout. Looks like I had a little piece of paint or a little splatter of paint that wasn't dry. I'm going to hide that with a gemstone, so there are ways to disguise any little mistake like that. And then again, scatter my jewels, pop this onto a white top fold card base. This background is A2 sized, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And that is going to complete my 2 cards featuring the Spellbinders January 2019 Stamp of the Month stamp set. So I hope you guys will check it out. If you guys love stamps like I love stamps, this is a great way to receive a brand new stamp set every month and create some really fun seasonal and occasion type cards that I know you're going to love. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these cards featuring the Spellbinders January 2019 Stamp of the Month Club stamps. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Spellbinders club kits that you might be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.